1915 fire. Okay, I don't know, does anybody know much about it? It was on November 29th, 1915. And this all occurred because of a family by the name of Rose. His name was Robert O. Rose, not Roy Rose, no connection with the Rose here in Avalon now, but it was Roy Rose. I mean, it was Robert O. Rose. They had a home, a cafeteria, and a hotel up on Whitley. Now, Whitley, I don't know if you know where Whitley is. It's the next street over from Metropole. And so if you go to the left, on the corner is the Bellalaca, or whatever they call the name of the hotel. And then it's just a couple of buildings up to your right, as there's a little turn in the road. That's where the original one was.
Oh.
Okay.
So that's where the fire started. Now, the reason for the fire, you can imagine how quiet this town must have been on November 29th, 1915, especially in November. Now, the property was owned by the Banning brothers. The Bannings owned the property, owned the island before the Wrigleys. They took, Mr. Wrigley took over in 1919, 4 years later, and it was primarily because of the fire. So it's all connected, how the Wrigleys got here, everything. So anyway, they had only had the property since 1912, and it had taken on many different names as hotels. So either the location was wrong or something was wrong. Nobody really did very well with it. Well, finally, the Rose family said, enough of it is enough. We're going to have to find a way to regain some of our losses. So they came up with a brilliant idea. Why don't we burn down our home, our hotel, and our cafeteria, and collect the life insurance, or collect the fire insurance. Mr. Rose had even a better idea. Why don't I lock my mother-in-law in the attic, set the building on fire, and collect her life insurance? So he did. Now, the fire jumped originally, and I think you've all seen pictures of it. In fact, we might want to pull out one of the history books. You'll see a picture of the original Metropole Hotel. It's where the Metropole Marketplace is now, all the way from Metropole all the way over to Whitley. It went up 3 stories all the way back to the old Vons. It had about 150 rooms. So the fire jumped from the Rose compound to the Metropole Hotel and caught it on fire, which was not part of the plan.
Wow.
Now, in the 1970s, I was meeting with every islander, every native that I could who was here for the 1915 fire, trying to make sure that I got all the information right. So I met a very interesting gentleman. His name was Stephen Darcy. He went by the name of Squirrel Darcy because he used to be the caddy for the Banning brothers, and he used to have to climb trees to get the balls out of the trees. So his nickname was Squirrel, but his name was Stephen Darcy, and he used to be a glass bottom rowboat.
Oh, yeah.
He used to row the rowboats before they became mechanized in 1905. So he'd been here, he and his brother had been here for a long time. So the 2 weeks before the fire, some of the locals, of course they're very old by this time, told me that they noticed that Mr. and Mrs. Rose were on the old Hermosa boat going to the mainland with all their personal items, which they thought was a little strange. Why would they be leaving the island with their personal items knowing they still had a home, a cafeteria, and a hotel? So they thought that was, of course, now we know why. They didn't want to be implicated in the fire. So the reason I know this to be the truth is because Stephen Darcy said that he and Titch Morisich, who was a constable at the time, found out the plot to kill Mrs. Rose's mother, so they got her out in time. He reported she was a little pissed off. I don't know why. It was November. They were keeping her warm. I guess no good deed goes unpunished. But anyway, they got her out in time. Now the manager of the hotel, of the complex, was now ready to set the fire. So what he did is he set the fire on the main level of the 2-story building, ran up the stairs to the 2nd story, which is where the attic was, where Mrs. Rose's mother supposedly was still in, but she'd already been removed. He didn't know that. But he realized that the fire had now jumped from the Rose compound to the Metropole Hotel, which was not part of the plan. So he had to let the people of Avalon know that the town was now on fire and that we had to do something. Well, he couldn't go back down the stairs to the 1st level because it was already on fire. So he jumped from the balcony of the 2nd story, landed on those bricks, ran down the bricks yelling fire.
Wow.
So by the next morning, half the town of Avalon was destroyed. Nobody was hurt or killed in the 1915 fire, but it still destroyed almost all the hotels and restaurants that the Banning brothers had. Now, the question comes up, and I would love to have somebody do some research or help me with this. Nobody knows the story, and I think I know why. Because if the insurance companies realized that this was arson, they would never be able to collect on the insurance. So I think the Banning brothers either paid off Mrs. Rose's mother-in-law or anybody else because they had to rebuild the town. Half the town was destroyed. Now, they were pretty much already broke to begin with. They did not need to lose all their insurance, fire insurance. So I would love to be able to find the records, and they must be somewhere, to see what their final, the final decision was made. Because again, if it was arson, they wouldn't have collected a penny, and the town never would have been able to be rebuilt.
Wow.
So the Banning brothers went crazy because now they're going into a summer, well, it's November, but a season's coming up. So they quickly started building small hotels and restaurants to make up for the difference. Now, the, which I jokingly call the ski slopes on the sides of the hill. You see those, I joke with people and I said, those are ski slopes. People told us that if we build them, they will come. Well, we did, and nobody showed up because it doesn't snow here. But those are fire breaks. They were put there in 1916, right after the fire, to make sure it didn't happen again. Unfortunately, they were very ineffective for the fire we had on May 10th, 2007.
Yes.
The fire jumped right over all of them. But again, that's the reason they're there. So they then quickly built the St. Catherine Hotel down at Descanso Beach in 1918 in hopes that they could, do something to recoup with all the restaurants and all the hotels that were destroyed. And so I talked to some of the Banning descendants, and the Banning brothers were already pretty well broke even before the fire. Now, I don't want to sound wrong, but they said it was because the Banning boys, there were 3 brothers, Hancock, Joseph, and come on, Chuck.
Phineas.
Huh?
Phineas.
No, that was the father.
Oh, okay.
Phineas was the father. Hancock, Joseph, and William. William were the 3 brothers. Okay, now I'm only telling you what the descendants told me. Their wives were spending the money faster than they were making. I'm only telling you what they told. This came from the Bannings. So they said that the reason they went bankrupt is because no matter how much money they made, their wives were making sure that they... So even before the fire, they were already pretty well broken.
Wow.
So they went to Mr. Wrigley. Now, Mr. Wrigley had moved here with his wife, Ada, in 1916. They have a home, a mansion on Orange Grove Boulevard in Pasadena. The reason is they wanted to get involved with the Tournament of Roses parade. Mm-hmm. And just as a kind of a strange connection, the gentleman who started the Tournament of Roses parade also started the Tuna Club. His name was Charles Frederick Holder. He was from Pasadena. So not only did he start our Tuna Club, he also started the Tournament of Roses parade.
Your tuna club?
Yeah, we have a building called the Tuna Club.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and by the way, people have asked me, do you have to eat tuna to become a member of the club? No, you don't have to eat tuna. But it burned down in the 1915 fire, so the building that's there now was built in 1916. The other building, the major one that was rebuilt, was the Hotel Catalina up on Whitley, that big 3 or 4 story building. Yeah. It burned down in the 1915 fire also. So it was built in 1960. So these were the first two after the 1915 fire. So I think I've made all the connections to things that you might know now. Is the fact that that's how the fire got started, why the fire got started, and regardless of what people tell you, nobody got it. I think one person might have tried to put out, I forgot to mention probably the most important thing. Okay, the fire officially hit the town at approximately midnight. Okay. But this is the fun part, I think. They already set a couple of fires up on Eucalyptus, which is one of the streets that we have up here. It's the one that's cut off from traffic. Mm-hmm. Okay, so as part of the plan to get the fire trucks, which were very basic in 1915, very little water pressure, in order to get them diverted, they started some fires up on Eucalyptus Street. Wow. So everybody was running up to Eucalyptus because of the fires that they were putting out there. So nobody paid any attention to this part of town, which is where the major fire was. Those were just diversions. Wow. Now, the hoses had never really been ever used. We'd never